welcome everybody to today's session. Today we're talking about the Central Discovery Index. Let me just get to the next slide here. So we're talking about CDI and the Central Discovery Index. My name is Laura and I am part of the Premium Services team. As Ray mentioned, I am joined here by Milan from Primo Tier 2 Support, who I'm going to guess that many of you here have had cases that you've talked to Milan before. So I'm very grateful that he's here to help me answer questions as well. So we'll get started with the content here. So today we're going to talk about what CDI is, how it works with ALMA. We'll also take a look at how availability is determined. So how we get those available online flags in discovery, whether we have PrimoV or a summon discovery instance with our ALMA. We'll also take a look a little bit at how you can affect and control some pieces of availability. And what some of the settings are in the sort of CDI options that you have. We'll kind of go through that. We'll also take a look at the fully flexible and the easy active models of working with CDI. Oh, I see a question to try and increase my volume. Let's see. I'll try to speak louder. I don't know if there's much I can do to increase the sound, but please let me know if there continues to be any issues with sound. But we'll talk about the fully flexible and the easy active models that allow us to work with CDI, not to, there's no, switching between the two or anything like that, but just to kind of understand what they do, what they are, and also to help you parse through documentation if you see differences. It might be because the model that you're looking at in the documentation is different. So we'll take a look at two environments that are set up in both of these ways. We'll also look at CDI attributes that we see in our ALMA collections and how we can search on them. And we'll also look at some sort of basic troubleshooting issues that you might have, things to look at first, and also ways to gather additional information if you need to, for example, enter a support ticket at that point to try to gather as much information as possible before you do that. So we'll start with what is CDI. So basically, you might have had the concept of discovery versus delivery used previously in implementation or other, places where we're talking about, CDI and sort of the interplay between ALMA and CDI, or previously PCI. But ultimately, your e-resources are configured so that your patrons, your faculty, and your staff can use them, of course. And to give your patrons access to your electronic resources, they need to be able to search for and discover materials. So that's the discovery piece. So finding the citations, finding the books, finding the articles, finding the journals, the ebooks, all of the stuff that you have in your catalog. Finding it first, of course, finding what they need. And then the delivery piece is how are they actually getting to the full text of that material if it's an online resource. So the Central Discovery Index sits on the discovery side. So you have around now, I think it's closer to around 5 billion e-resource citations. The Central Discovery Index is the combination of the previous Primo Central Index along with the Summon Index. So it's combined these together to make richer metadata records and, of course, to give all of our customers access to as much citation information as is possible. So this citation index, the Central Discovery Index, is obviously also constantly growing as we work with our, our publishers, aggregators, et cetera, as they add citations into this index as publications publish additional articles. Obviously, these are all ingested and added into the Central Discovery Index for purposes of discovery. So this is also accessible in both of Libris's discovery systems. So whether or not you have Primo, Classic, Primo V, or a Summon instance, everybody is searching at this point the Central Discovery Index. And of course, you may also have digital repositories that you've included in ALMA, but in this session, we're going to be specifically looking at how your electronic content that is not stored locally, so those external records, how they interplay with ALMA. Most of your resources are free to search. So by free to search, I mean you're able to discover the citation whether or not you have full text access to it in Alma. So you're able to see that that citation exists. Maybe you find an article that you want, your library doesn't subscribe to it, but you're still able to see, that it exists and what it exists in and that kind of information. So most resources are free to search, but there are some abstracting and indexing type databases that are restricted for search only for customers that subscribe to them. Usually that's because the abstracting and indexing databases are actually selling the citations themselves, so they're not able to be exposed unless you actually have a subscription to that collection. So in terms of the delivery piece, then there's the configuration in Alma that handles the linking to the actual electronic content itself. So this may be the full text of articles in e-journals, in ebooks, other research outputs and data, open access content, etc. Each citation itself in the CDI collection is going to provide information on how to actually get the content, so how you're actually getting to the full text. This could be via direct linking to the material from the CDI citation, or it could be leveraging the link resolver to determine the best place to access the content. And we'll take a look when we look in Alma at where we can find what kind of linking is being utilized in this collection, whether or not it's direct linking or it's utilizing the Alma link resolver. And that's also going to have some consequences on what choices we can make in terms of affecting availability. And of course, some of our paid subscription type databases may also require authentication or authorization to access them. Those that are behind a proxy, likely you would need to either authenticate or be on campus in the IP range of your institution to be able to actually get to the full text of that material. So how does it all work together? The first piece is Libris and ProQuest work with various publishers, aggregators, and other subscription and open access repositories to get the citation data on an ongoing basis. So that's us, gathering this information, working with folks to get the article level, book chapter level citations loaded into the Central Discovery Index. The second piece is your users are conducting a search in Primo or Summon, and they're potentially searching in a scope that contains the Central Discovery Index. Maybe it also contains local collection data, depending on how you have your instance set up. And then they receive results. And we can see as this video sort of scrolls through this particular example, this chocolate and health related quality of life, we see that it's peer reviewed also. So you can see the peer reviewed flag. It's available online. This is a CDI citation. It's an article level citation. So your user is actually finding this article level result that's coming from CDI. And when the content is available, so you have your available online, you can click into the record, your user can click into one of the links, and then they're actually, assuming they have potentially the correct login information, if it's behind a paywall or something like that, then they're brought to the full text of the database and they can actually utilize the resource. And these full text links that kind of went quickly through in the video under the view online here, these appear in Discovery because the electronic collections and the services were activated in Alma. So this is the piece where you activate your electronic collections in Alma. The citation is what your user is using to find the article, find the resource. Once they click in there, the view online is going to populate with all of the collections and services that you have activated in Alma that will bring your user to the actual full text of the material. So that's sort of the interplay between the CDI collections, the citations that we were talking about in the index, and your Alma activations. So let's take a look at how this looks in Alma and Primo. So I'm going to go into a Primo instance here, and I'm going to start typing in here. I'm going to replicate this search, chocolate and health. And I see my scopes dropping down, my search profiles dropping down here. In this instance, in this environment, this is a sandbox that we have access to. Most of these scopes are out of the box. And so we have the articles search profile activated here, and that's what I'm going to search in. This particular scope that I'm searching in contains only central discovery index data. So I don't have any local resources in here. Often, maybe in your environment, you've configured it so you have CDI and your local resources together. That's a super common way to have it set up as a sort of everything search. But just to note that there's only CDI information in this particular scope in this environment. So here I have my search results here. I see I have a lot of article level resources. So I have my titles. I can see that many of them are peer reviewed or open access or open access here. These indicators are put onto these resources from our publishers and aggregators. So they're flagging those as peer reviewed or open access. The other thing to note as I sort of scroll through here, everything that I see is available online. And this initial search that I did is the filtered search. And this is how most institutions start their search or have their CDI set up, their CDI scopes set up by default. So it's only showing me things that I have those links for in Alma so I can get to the full text. Or if it's an abstracting and indexing database, it's something that I subscribe to. So that's generally how folks have the initial sort of search set up. You can search beyond what you have full text access to using the expanded search. So it's very possible that you've changed the text over here, or maybe your menu appears on the right side, or you've changed the text of expand my search here. But you can use this box to expand your search results to all of the CDI citations that are active for search that match your search terms. So now we're seeing lots of things that are no online access. So we have no online access. Some of these things we do have online access to because it's kind of lumping everything together at this point. So we're searching everything that's active for search in the central discovery index that match our search terms. So what's useful also for here, as before we kind of move away from the expanded search, I'll click on one of these citations here. So this is a book, Chocolate and Health. And when I go to the how to get it, so normally this would contain, if we had access to this material, it would have the links to our resource, our full text links to the resource. But here we have a how to get it, and you can configure, for example, a purchase request or a request for interlibrary loan for articles or books, so that your user can actually potentially, if you're doing ILL, request access to the resource. So this allows them greater discovery to other citations beyond what your library holds that they may be interested in using for some sort of research purpose. So I'll go back to my my original search here, and I'm just going to take a look at this first article here, just to show the online access. So online access, so I have activated this PubMed Central training collection in Alma. So it's active in my Alma instance that belongs to this Primo V instance. And that's why I'm seeing this appear here. And I also see the coverage statement underneath that's coming from the community zone. So in this case, I know that this journal here, Frontiers in Nutrition, I subscribe to a collection that contains this portfolio, and the coverage statement allows me to have full text access to this particular article. And then I can click into it. And if you're brought to the article or the journal level, that's to do with the linking level in Alma. Sometimes the metadata is not such that you can get directly to the article. But here I am, and I'm in Frontiers in Nutrition, and I can get to the full text of my material at that point. So this is then coming from my Alma activations. Okay, so let me go back to our PowerPoint here. And we'll take a look at how availability is determined. So in Primo, when we saw our search results, these are the citations that are coming from the Central Discovery Index. In other words, the collections or collection that were contained in these citations were active in CDI. That's true of both the filtered search, so the search where everything is available online, and the expanded search where we're expanding our search beyond what we have full text access to. And whether or not they have that available online flag is to do with the activation status in ALMA. So we see PubMed Central Journals free in ALMA, it's active, it's blue, this one is linked to the community zone. And also to point out, and we'll talk more specifically about the fully flexible versus the easy active model later, but this is specific to the fully flexible model. We have the available for CDI search activation here, and active for search in CDI is yes. So those are some options that you'll see if that is the model that you have. If you're easy active, you won't see those things. It'll be a little bit more of a condensed sort of display because everything is active for search by default. So then the links that we have here coming from the link resolver here, these are coming from resources, again, that are active in ALMA. The service is active here. So for this electronic collection, the service, the portfolios or publications within that collection were activated in ALMA. And again, the coverage statement is taken into account. And that's why we're seeing whatever links we see here under full text availability that we can click into. So at this point, this is how ALMA and CDI work together to determine that since the portfolio or the publication is active in ALMA and the articles in this journal fall under the coverage statement, they should be marked as available online. ALMA communicates this information to CDI using a process that collects all of your electronic holdings that you have active in ALMA, and it publishes it to a unique holdings file that represents all of the holdings that your institution holds, and it's published to CDI, and the matches are made. The job that does this is here under your resources menu, under publishing profiles. You have publish electronic records to CDI. In your environment, you'll want to make sure that this is running every day. Likely you don't have a ton of options for scheduling in the cloud environment, but you'll want to make sure that it's running daily. And then you can check on the runs to make sure that publishing is running properly. And this is going to keep CDI up to date with your electronic holdings. So anything that you've activated in ALMA, anything also you've deactivated in ALMA, you'll want to make sure is being published to the Central Discovery Index, to your file, so that that matching process knows whether or not to put that available online flag for that particular citation. Another thing to note here is that this entire process, from the time that you activate something, during the workday, maybe today, later tonight, likely your publishing profile will run, publishing your electronic records. And from the time that that happens to the time that you see changes in the available online flags in your Primo V instance is about 48 to 72 hours. So there is a delay, so it's not going to be immediate. You make the activation right now. You're not going to see tomorrow after this job runs that the available online flag is necessarily set to available online. So we'll talk about also in the troubleshooting section some ways we can kind of move around that or have some control over that. But it does take about 48 to 72 hours to do this publishing process and the matching process. So there is always a bit of a delay there. So we kind of talked a bit about how availability is determined, how Primo V knows what you have access to in ALMA. So let's talk about the ways that you can potentially control availability. So there are basically sort of four different options available to you to sort of affect what happens between the ALMA collection and the CDI collection. Starting with the simplest, which is basically just activation or deactivation. So is your service available to your users? So this is going to correspond to that publishing process that's going to flag the resource as available online. or potentially, if you mark it as not available, is going to prevent that link from showing up. And if you don't have this resource, whatever the publication is that you're looking at in PubMed Central Journals free, if it doesn't exist in any other collection, then you won't see any CDI citations for that particular journal. And you would never see then the links appear in that list of links for a citation that would correspond to PubMed Journals free. So that's one way to affect availability. We also have some other settings. So we have the setting, do not show as full text available in CDI, even if active in ALMA. So you have the option to mark the content as not available in CDI, even if you have the ALMA collection active. So normally we know that if we make the activation in ALMA, we are also at the same time activating the corresponding CDI collection if it exists. So this is a way to say, and it's right down here, if you can see my mouse, do not show as full text available in CDI, even if active in ALMA. So this is preventing the CDI results from showing up. So it's preventing the article, book chapter level CDI collection from displaying in your search. Even if you have this collection in ALMA, it will allow your local bibs to display. So your local bibs coming from this collection will still be published. And the links to full text will still appear in the full record. In another citation, you'll still get the link to this resource, and you'll still get obviously the link through the bibliographic record that's published locally from ALMA as well. So what is the use case for using this particular setting? One use case is if you have or are activating a significant amount of open access content, and you don't want the results from the open access CDI collections to overwhelm your subscription or paid resources. So you may want to have some control over whether or not you're going to get a ton of citations from your open access collections coming from CDI. Maybe you want to restrict that and still keep the access from the link to full text record if you happen to have that portfolio. If it exists in other subscription databases, you can still retain the link to full text from your open access collection. The other reason you might use this setting is for deduplication in a specific case for an ebook collection, and we'll talk about that in a few slides and also with the next setting. So you sometimes also might see CDI only full text activation. So this is sort of the inverse of the previous setting. So this is using only the CDI activation and not at all using your ALMA bib, and also not using information in terms of link resolver or any of the linking information coming from the local ALMA collection. And so you actually see in this screenshot here that this is not active in ALMA. So normally we think of our the material that we have available online in Primo V as a collection that is active in ALMA. In this case, the collection is not active, but in the CDI tab, we have marked CDI only full text activation. So this link only appears for CDI collection types link in record. So it's only available if the link to the full text appears in the citation from CDI itself. Because otherwise, if it was using the link resolver, this collection would definitely need to be activated so that the resolution to full text could utilize the linking parameters and the link resolver that's described in the collection. So you'll only see the box CDI only full text activation if the collection type in CDI is link in record, sorry. So you'll only see that in that scenario. So why might you use this setting? Well, the main use case for this is handling duplicate ebooks in CDI results. So in the case that you are activating a mainly ebook collection and its corresponding CDI collection, of course, the local bibliographic records you have, the title level bibs, will be published to your discovery. as well as you will have book level CDI citations in your discovery instance. And if you have a blended scope, so you have a scope that's searching both local resources and external resources and CDI resources, there is going to be duplication. We know that our local records and our CDI records cannot merge, they cannot deduplicate together. So if you want to make some changes to eliminate this duplication, you can use one of these settings for that reason. So you can use the do not show as full text available in CDI, even if active in ALMA, to use your local bib records instead of CDI. So the pros is that it uses your local bib records. The con is that you're not going to get the book chapter level, the book review level. If it's a mixed package, you're not going to get the article level content flagged as available online. The other option, if it's a link and record type collection, you can use CDI-only full text activation and rely only on the CDI citations for access to that collection. The pros of this is then you get that book chapter level, the book review level citations available and flagged as available online to be used by your users. The con is that, of course, you only see this in the scenario that the collection is of type link and record, and the con is that you're not able to use your local bib records. Caveat to all of this is that there is an enhancement coming for this sometime in the second half of 2021. I realize we're coming up on the second half of 2021 now. I'm not entirely sure when this is, under what month this is going to come out, but the idea of the enhancement is that you are able to use your local bib for the bib level, title level discovery alongside with the book chapter, book review, etc. CDI citations without having that title level citation coming from CDI. So if you want to deal with some duplication before that enhancement, these are your choices. There might be other reasons why you're making these choices as well, like the open access reason, but just letting you know that there's an enhancement for this. Of course, you don't have to do anything about the duplication. Maybe it's fine that there's a duplicate, it's more access points for your user, in which case feel free to ignore this whole sort of scenario and just kind of let the local bibs and the CDI citations be active. There's one more setting that you likely have seen. It is we subscribe to only some titles in this collection, yes or no. This affects the matching process between your local electronic holdings, what you have activated in ALMA, and the CDI citations from the Central Discovery Index. If you say we subscribe to only some titles in this collection, yes. So selective, you have a selective package, you're only subscribing to some pieces in this collection. The matching process says, okay, I need to look at every portfolio this institution has available and make sure that the coverage statements match, make sure that they have access to this portfolio for every article or book chapter level citation that I want to display as available online. So this is a more sort of granular matching. It takes longer, which is another thing to consider, but it's going to go through each portfolio individually to make the matches. If you say, we subscribe to only some titles in this collection, no, then it's basically an aggregator collection. You're telling CDI, you don't have to go through all that work. Just mark everything as available online, and it will help speed up that sort of matching process, and it will just automatically make that CDI collection available online in its entirety. So it really depends on if you truly are subscribing to everything like an aggregator package and you're adding the additional portfolios as they become available, then you can select no. I believe at this point the default is set to yes. Which is the more refined situation. So that's probably a safer way to go if you don't know for sure, so that you don't end up having false availability flags in discovery. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the differences between the fully flexible and the easy active models in CDI, or rather, I guess, yeah, in CDI. So you have your fully flexible and easy active settings. what you're on now, what model you've been migrated to, might have been decided by your implementation team, or it might have been decided based on what you were doing previously, previous customer, and you wanted to continue with having some control over your activation process. And this is not to just say one is better than the other or anything like that. It's just to kind of explain the differences between the models and then to kind of show you side by side what they look like. Just so again, it's maybe easier to parse through documentation that's slightly different between the two. So if you were previously in the Primo Central Index sort of model, the sort of predecessor to CDI, you know that you had to go into a separate area to make activations for the Primo Central Index. Thankfully, you don't have to do that anymore. But you had control over which collections you wanted to activate in Primo Central that would allow you to search only the citations from those collections in that expanded search. So when you expanded your search, you were able to decide which collection citations you wanted to see. If you're on a fully flexible model, that is still how it works. You're able to decide which collections you want to have active for search. So which collections you want their citations to be available in the expanded search, you can make that decision. And so you just have a little bit more control over it, but also there's potentially the additional overhead of making those choices. For the easy active model, everything that can be activated by default is activated by default. So what I mean by that is when you search in the expanded search on an easy active environment, everything that does not require a subscription is searchable in the expanded search. That does not mean, of course, that everything is flagged as available online. For both models, that still requires your activation in Alma. But this marks everything as available for search in the back end. Everything is discoverable. So that discovery versus delivery piece, with the exception for both models, of course, of the collections that require a subscription to search, like your abstracting and indexing databases that don't allow their citations to be exposed unless the user has a subscription to that. So let's take a look at, oh, and I've been logged out of this one. 1 second. Let me make sure I'm still logged into this one. Okay. So I have 2 different Alma environments up. This one that I'm on right now, this is an easy active environment, and this one over here is a fully flexible environment. So we're just going to look kind of at the differences you'll see in the community zone. This one's also part of a network, but we're not going to look at the network zone at this point. So I'm going to search in my electronic collection search here in the community zone just for Gale, and I'll do the same over here so we can see the differences. So here is the fully flexible model. Actually, I want to start over here. Okay, so here is our easy active model. We'll start there first. So as I'm scrolling down, and again, I'm in the community zone, doing a search in the community zone here. So I can see, sort of my options here on the right. I can see a portfolio list for a collection. I can see activate. So this is activating the collection for Alma. So, activating the service, activating the portfolio so that they're available to be searched in Primo V or Summon. And then I have my other options that are, sort of hidden here. I can take a look at the descriptive record, so the descriptive bib record for EBSCOhost audiobooks. I can potentially go through the ordering process to order this, all the usual stuff, report to Libris if there's an issue with the metadata. So that's kind of what you see here. Your activate for Alma, your ordering options, your portfolio list, etc. So switching over here, this is the fully flexible model. So as I'm searching in the community zone here, I see some other pieces. So I still see activate here for this Gale resource, but I also see activate for search in CDI. So if I click this, I'm exposing these citations for search in the expanded search in CDI. I'm not activating it for use in Alma. I'm not saying I own this. I'm saying I want to be able to search Gale News Vault citations in the expanded search in my CDI instance. And then down here, we have the same options that are hidden under this ellipses, descriptive record order, report checks, Libris. So this is what you would see if you've had the flexibility to activate this for search. You also see available for CDI search activation with the little hover bubble, and there's been more hover bubbles put into different places in Alma, which I really love. So they're really useful. And then you also see, so if you did subscribe it, so if you were subscribed to this and it was active for search in CDI, for example, in your environments, if you were searching for your institution zone, you would see available for search equals yes, as we saw in that screenshot previously. So just kind of a quick overview of some of the differences that you might see. And you can also kind of see, it's an easy way to check, I guess, if you weren't sure what you had set up at your institution. So I'm going to go now to, let me see, I think that's all I wanted to say about easy active versus fully flexible. So let me also, before we sort of go into the CDI attributes, I'll just show this slide about user roles that you might need to make some adjustments, both for activating, depending on the model you have, activating things for search in CDI, activating things to be used, activating things to be used in your Alma instance, activating it for full text. So you likely will want to have the CDI inventory operator role so that you're able to change those central discovery index resources and settings. You'll also want to have the electronic inventory operator or extended role so that you can activate stuff, deactivate stuff, work on your electronic collections and portfolios, adjust your coverage, all of that kind of thing. And then again, with the extended role, you're also able to delete electronic inventory as well. And then there's also the repository manager, which will allow you to do things like assign activation tasks to people at your institution. If you need to make some changes to a bib record, if you're localizing a bib or something like that, and you need to get into the metadata editor, you'll need that repository manager role. So likely recommended that your electronic resource management librarians or a similar role at your library have at least the CDI inventory operator role and the electronic inventory operator role or the extended role that will allow them to activate stuff in Alma, activate stuff for use, activate stuff for CDI that aren't automatically activated if you're fully flexible. So likely that's kind of what you'll want to have for that. So let's take a look also at some CDI attributes. So I'm going to look here. Where's my Gale collection? I want to search in my institution zone. So I'm going to take a look at this Gale Interactive Human Anatomy collection here. So I see that it's active, it's active in Alma, it's linked to the community zone. To note here, you also have some CDI information that displays, kind of just in the general collection search. So you have your search rights, your full text rights, etc. You have your linked order, all that kind of stuff. So this is in my institution zone, and I'm going to go to the edit collection option here to take a look at some of those CDI settings. So in the electronic collection editor, if there's a CDI collection associated with this Alma collection, you'll see the CDI tab with some folded over content, so you know that there's something in there. So clicking into the CDI tab, here are my institution settings. So here's this, we subscribe to only some titles in this collection, yes or no. You'll also, likely you've seen this if you've done some activation for a collection prior to, or since rather, your switch to CDI. You'll see these settings pop up in the wizard as well when you're doing the activation. So it's set to yes, this is selective. We're only subscribing to some titles here. And again, if you hover over, there's been a lot of things I've noticed that have been added that are some explainers, which is super useful. And then you have do not show as full text available in CDI, even if active in Alma. We've not checked this, so we're publishing both our local records and our CDI records to, in this case, Primovi. No local notes here. But under that, we have some read-only information about the CDI collection itself. So CDI collection ID or DBID is listed here, and you can use this for some searching that we'll see in a second. So that's the actual just code that's given to this collection. You can see the number of citations that exist. So there's about 545,000 of them in this particular collection. Also useful is the CDI update frequency. So this is updated monthly. So that's the agreement that Libris has made with Gale for this particular collection to update citations in here. The full text linking in CDI, here is where we see whether or not this is link resolver or link and record. So this is where you can tell what kind of full text linking is going on. In this case, we're utilizing the ALMA link resolver to get to the full text for this particular collection. It's not in the newspapers index. If you have newspapers turned on, you'll see no yes or yes newspapers index only here as options. Here we have provider coverage. I'm sorry if it's loud. There's an ambulance going by. So sorry about that if you hear some background noise, but provider coverage here is basically saying, is Gale providing both the ALMA citation, or rather the ALMA collection and the CDI collection, yes or no, the CDI citations. So in this case, they're not. So when there's still a CDI collection and provider coverage equals no, that means that at least 80% of the collection can be gathered from other citations from other collections and aggregators in the Central Discovery Index. But you'll see yes or no. Sometimes there's a line through here. I think that means there's maybe not enough information, or it's not quite clear if it's provider coverage or not. Resource types. So these are the resource types that are contained within this CDI collection. Your full text rights. So this is subscription. So in order to get to the full text, you need to subscribe. And you're getting to it from the link resolver. You might also see open access or restricted for search if it was an abstracting or indexing type database. And then the CDI type is full text collection. Other options you might see are selected full text or abstracting and indexing type databases. So that's what you'll see. If there's a CDI collection, you'll see this information kind of populated at the bottom. Also to note, you can search for it. So for an electronic collection search, an advanced search, if I go into electronic collection here, I can search on the DBID, full text linking, full text rights, etc. You can see which collections, if you have newspapers, which collections are included in the newspaper index, what kind of search rights. If you've suppressed full text, you can see all of that. You can search on that. You can also use these search pieces in the community zone as well if you're trying to, figure something out or narrow something down. Those are options for you as well. Okay, so the final topic here is troubleshooting. So we're just going to go through some sort of basic troubleshooting scenarios that you might have run into, and kind of maybe some solutions or at least some things to look at. So in this first example, you search for the exact title of an article and you don't find any results. So what do you do in this case? So the first thing you might want to try is expanding your results to see if the article exists, first of all, in the Central Discovery Index. And you might see it then if it appears with the availability statement then of no online access. Now, if you think you should have access to this portfolio or this article, you'd want to search for that portfolio in ALMA, and you want to see if it's activated. Maybe if it's not activated, well, that would be your problem. You would need to activate it, or activate the collection that houses that portfolio. If it's already active in a collection, you might confirm that the coverage statement actually includes the article that you're seeing. And maybe you need to, maybe you've negotiated some local coverage and you need to change that coverage statement, in which case, you would need to wait again for the publishing process to complete the 24 to 48, or rather 48 to 72 hours before you would get the correct availability statement there. If the expanded search still doesn't have the result you're looking for, so now you've expanded your result and you still don't find it, in this case, it could be the case if you're a fully flexible customer that you simply haven't activated those citations for search. So that could be one thing. Another thing could be this particular article is just not indexed in the Central Discovery Index. In that case, if it's really new, if you're looking for something that's super recent, we saw in the CDI collection, the information in ALMA, that many of the collections are updated monthly. It might be the case that simply we don't have the article yet. It's not been provided by the aggregator or the publisher. Or it could be the case that it's still in that 48 to 72 hour period. It is there, but we don't have the availability flag yet because it's new and we're publishing that information at this point. So in that case, if it's really new, I would say wait a little bit and see if you get the availability flag, properly populating. You can also take a look, of course, for the article on the vendor website. And if everything looks okay, it's past the monthly update and all of that, and you still don't see it, it's possible that you need to enter a case with our team that deals with the Central Discovery Index, and maybe there's some reason why that particular article is not appearing, and you can kind of ping them for more information on that. So in this scenario, let's say that you've activated the resource in ALMA and in CDI, but when you go to Discovery to test it, you're not seeing the search results from that resource yet. So we saw in the one example, if you can expand your search, if you don't see it in your filtered search, you can expand your search. The other thing to say about that is if you do that and you see and it says no, not available online, if you do truly have access to it and the coverage statement is right, it's activated, all that kind of stuff, and you're waiting for that 48 to 72 hour window, maybe you have a faculty member who needs this material right away, you can always click into that citation, and that's when your discovery system actually asks ALMA, like, hey, double check 100%, do we have access to this material? If you do have it active, it will change the availability statement to available online, and you actually can get to it. So the initial availability statement is incorrect, but if you click into it, you will have access. So that's something you can tell your faculty or staff who are, really anxious for some material maybe to be active and available for their users. The caveat to that is the search rights subscription only, so restricted for search. If you can't see the citation even in the expanded search, it's restricted. It's an abstracting and indexing or some type of resource where you can't search even for the citation until you subscribe to it. In that case, you truly do have to wait that 48 to 72 hours in order to see that. Just because you can't even get to the citation and have that kind of like back-end way to get into the material. To note also is the Easy Active Collections list that you can find in the Knowledge Center. As I said, most collections are available for search, that you can activate them for search, or they're automatically available for search if you're Easy Active. But there are some, and you see some here in column C, these are abstracting and indexing type databases, and you can kind of check out what they are if it's easier to see that in a sort of like an Excel spreadsheet. You can find that. You can also filter here for like newspapers and other things like that if it's easier to work with the collections that way rather than doing a search in ALMA. The next scenario relates to authentication. So if you click into the available online, you click into the full text availability here, and you're brought to a paywall. So what do we do then? So you'll want to make sure that if it's a subscription resource, perhaps you have not enabled the proxy for it and you need to have the proxy enabled, or maybe the proxy is not the correct proxy or something like that. So you'll want to make sure that that's set as expected. Another thing, if the proxy is set correctly, is to check to see if there are linking parameters, so or special parser parameters here. So we're going into the service under the linking tab, and we're checking to see at the bottom of this page, are there linking parser parameters that you need to fill in? For some vendors, almost always there are like Gale and ProQuest and sometimes EBSCO, depending on if you have, the plugin set up or not. You might need to fill these in. They might be incorrect, something like that. You'll need to have those filled in so that the database knows what institution you're coming from, and then to allow access for your user for that resource. So that's it for the content here. Just to mention the premium services team. If you are looking for one-on-one services, you want one-on-one training, you want workflow optimization sessions, hands-on configuration, other things, projects that you're doing and you want one-on-one help, there is a paid service from the premium services team, and you could be teamed with a consultant that will help you do that. And that is it. So if there are questions that I can answer, I'd be happy to do it. It looks like we have about 9 minutes. If not, happy to let folks roam on to whatever is next in the day.
Laura, we had a general question regarding fully flexible versus easy active and how they know which model or which kind of setting is being used for that customer, is being used for them.
Yeah, so there is a setting. I'm not sure that you're able to get to it. It's in the customer parameters. So you could always ask Ex Libris via a case to check that setting. Another thing you can do is you can go in the community zone and do an electronic collection search. And if you have that activate for full text in CDI, then you know that you're fully flexible. If you don't see that anywhere and you don't see that little bubble that says activate for full text with a little blue bubble, then you're likely easy active. Other questions?
Laura, we've got a pretty long one that just came in that says, if we have a portfolio activated in Alma that is associated with an ISSN, but does not have coverage dates set from a locally loaded bib, are article records with link resolver matching that ISSN in CDI marked as available online? We have a problem where such articles are being marked available online, but then it seems the link resolver does not provide the full text link for the article when the coverage dates are not set.
Yes, I could see that being true. If you're, for example, I mean, I'm not sure the exact scenario, but if it's a collection level and you have that, that do you subscribe to all portfolios in this collection, yes or no, that could play into it. And if you have it set to we subscribe to all, always have to like think about it. We subscribe to all portfolios in this collection equals yes, so it's an aggregator collection. I believe that it does not take, in that case, it also does not take coverage statements into account. It activates everything by default. But if it's not that scenario, it's a standalone portfolio or you're matching portfolio by portfolio, Alma does take the coverage statement into account to determine which articles you actually have access to based on the date range. So I could see there being false availability flags if there's no coverage statement. In that case, I would assume that CDI would match all articles for the run of that publication as available for that portfolio if nothing else is specifically limiting it. So in that case, I would imagine it might be the case that you need to add coverage statements to limit which articles are matched.
Okay, another question that just came in said, CDI only full text activation in the CDI tab of electronic collection editor. Can you go over what the selection means again? I feel like we had a couple of people who were interested in maybe hearing that definition one more time or what the difference is.
Sure. Let me get out of this PowerPoint here. Let me actually try searching for an electronic collection, and I'm going to search for, I think it's full text linking equals Lincoln record. So let's look at that. So let's try looking at this one. So I have specifically searched for CDI collections that are type link in record, and that's when you'll see this CDI only full text activation option. And basically what this would do is it suppresses all of my local bibs in favor of using only CDI information citations, bibliographic records that might be coming from the CDI collection. So I'm not using at all anything that's in this ALMA collection in that case. It's also possible in this scenario to not have this collection active. The reason that it's possible is because all of the information that's required to get to the full text is inside of the CDI citation itself. So that's why it's possible to have an inactive ALMA collection that is active for CDI, use this CDI only full text activation. All of the information that you need to get to full text is contained in that article itself. So it's not relying on the ALMA collection. And again, the sort of use case that I've seen most commonly used for this is if you have duplication with your local bib records and the book level citations coming from CDI in a blended scope. If there's duplication there and you want to limit that, you could choose, potentially to use only your local bib records using this one, or using only CDI information using this option here. And again, you'll only see it if this is a link in record type. So you could specifically search for that with an advanced search, or you can take a look at the full text linking to see if it would be possible in that scenario.
I think related to this, Laura, is the question, is it possible to have your cake and eat it too with a collection where you subscribe to only some of the content? Meaning, can you turn on one instance of a collection to show online availability, but another instance of the collection for search in CDI only? There are collections where we would want users to be able to discover content we don't own or subscribe to yet so that we can ILL it or perhaps purchase it.
So I guess in this case, if I'm understanding it right, you subscribe to it and you subscribe to only some titles in the collection, but you also want the other citations to which you don't subscribe to appear in the expanded search. So you can activate the collection for a full text search in CDI if you're a fully flexible customer, and then also activate selectively the portfolios. You can make both of those choices as far as I know. If you're an easy active customer, that's already done by default. So all of those citations are already searchable in the expanded search, and then the ones to which you have full text access will then appear as available online in your catalog.
I think there's another related question about whether it should be necessary to activate portfolios for link in record collections. And the answer should be no. Once you activate the collection, it should automatically activate all the portfolios. And is that correct?
Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
We've got one more that just came in. So if the
Sure.
collection is active in ALMA and there are no portfolios, since the collection should be discoverable in CDI already, CDI only full text activation selection should not make a difference, right?
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah. Okay. Oops, I'm sorry, I just copied the wrong one. So if the collection is active in ALMA and there are no portfolios, good Lord, sorry, my copy and paste keeps copying not the right thing. Sorry. I'll read it one more time before I try to copy it again. So if the collection is active in ALMA and there are no portfolios, since the collection should be discoverable in CDI already, CDI only full text activation selection should not make a difference, right?
Yes, I mean, if you have it active in ALMA, I mean, basically in that scenario, you have both your bib records published and your CDI citations, unless you specifically choose to use only one piece or the other piece. If you happen to find an ALMA bib record coming from a Lincoln record type collection, and you also have the ALMA, collection showing and activated, the Lincoln record, it will still utilize the Lincoln record method to deliver full text. I'm a little thrown by if there's no portfolios in the collection. I'm not sure, it might also be a reference to a database type collection where there's no full text service in portfolios, in which case almost always there you need to have it activated in Alma, and it would likely not be type Lincoln record. So hopefully I've answered that right.
I'm just going to put in the chat quickly a link where if you are interested in learning more about CDI, if you go to this link, you can find lots of webinars that have been done about specific sort of areas and questions around CDI. We're right at the top of the hour, so we're not going to be able to answer any more questions right now, but please do take a look there. Also, we are going to rerun our Primo V Become an Expert series later this year. So if you're interested in being alerted about that, and the other training that is going to be offered, which we have been continuing to offer quite a bit about CDI. Sign up with the link that I just threw in the chat for our newsletter. You'll get our monthly digest of all of the webinars that we're offering freely available every month.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'd like to encourage everybody, you will get a survey automatically prompted to you at the end of this session. We very much appreciate any of your feedback, and we take it to heart whenever we're planning future sessions. So please let us know what you thought. Thanks, Laura, and thanks, Milan. Have a great day.